Welcome back to Comedian MTG. My name is Ian. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about GalaxyCon Raleigh, and specifically the Misty Mountain Clash for Cash events. We're going to be talking about the fact that I did 3 tournaments over 3 days, and sort of the ups and downs of each tournament, what decks I took to each event, and going to go from there. So let's just start things off. The main event for the weekend was a Saturday 15K. So yeah, literally $15,000 on the line that Saturday event. So I knew I would definitely have to bring something that's, at least a very good, consistent deck, right? Because once again, $15,000 on the line, didn't really want to mess around. One of the things I did really want to experiment with was Nadu. I haven't played it since it got released, and I was really excited because for those who know how much I love Kenan and decks like that and decks like Sissay, right? Like Nadu does really fit into the demographic of strategies that I really, really enjoy. So my intent was to bring Nadu, see how it performed in the weekend, and go from there. And one thing I did, which I was very proud of myself for doing, was bring the pieces to be able to play the Kinnan list I played last weekend with some potential adjustments, right? So I brought all my Kinnan cards with me. One, because I didn't really have enough time to fully sleep up Nadu. I just grabbed the cards I needed and we flew out because there was, I think, 3 days between this event and the last one. We've had a very busy July. So basically had to get on a plane, ready to go in like 2.5 to 3 days. So definitely a quick turnaround. And yeah, we're going to talk about each of these events and sort of what happened in each of them. The first one was day one. This was just a simple little 1K, right? And let's talk about the Nadu list that I brought. There is a Nadu list here up on my Mox field, but it isn't, I'll give you a hint, the thing that I brought day one, because I changed it a bunch between when I played it the first time, when I played it the second time. So we're going to sort of skip the Nadu deck tech portion until later. But basically, I found that I was playing sort of a hybridized version. I did a bunch of research on a bunch of other Nadu lists that were doing well. I used Joking 101's list for inspiration. I used Gold Sabertooth's list for inspiration. I used Wounded Satellite's list for inspiration. And I also used Temujin's list for inspiration. So a number of pilots that I respect quite a good deal who have been doing very well with Nadu, right? Definitely had never played the bird before, and basically took my own version with more creatures than I think any of them were playing, closer to like the mid-range version, but with some more like stormy aspects in mine as well, right? And I brought that to the 1K, and I ended up going, it was only a 3-round cut to top 4 event, so I only ended up going 1 and 2. I didn't feel bad about the deck necessarily, but I wasn't super excited about it either. Yeah, so Misty Mountain Gaming helped get me out to these events. They're called Clash for Cash. One of their specific branches is just a bunch of Magic tournaments called Clash for Cash, and they've been really awesome to attend. Some of the numbers have been higher on attendance, some of the numbers have been lower on attendance, but they've been really professionally run the whole time. It's like the judging staff you would expect at every top deck event, very professionally run. And they don't get messed around, you know what I mean? They do tournaments that are like, if they say they're going to be $10,000, $15,000 tournaments, they pay out to those numbers, no matter how many people show up. So been really happy with those. There was definitely some logistical stuff on the first day, but all of that got really well cleared up as we went through the tournament. So all in all, still super happy attending these events. I will continue to attend them in the future. I really enjoy being there, and I really like the team from Misty Mountain who helps organize these things. So it's pretty cool on that part. So basically, Nadu day one, it was very clear I had some growing pains, right? It wasn't that Nadu was bad. It wasn't that, I was messing up anything particular. It was just that there was clearly still stuff I needed to learn and work on with Nadu, right? So I said, hey, I'm feeling really anxious about going into a 15K with a deck that I'm still learning how to optimize, right? Wounded Satellite also showed up and ended up making top 4 with Nadu, and he definitely had some notes about like that cards that were overperforming in his deck that I wasn't playing. Was very constructive when I played him in that tournament. So I said, you know what, we're going to put Nadu aside, and tomorrow I'm going to show up with Kinnan. And let's talk about the Kinnan list. So this is the Kinnan list, very similar to the one that you saw in last week's video. The only difference is I added the brand new, because this was Bloomburrow pre-release weekend, I had a Poliwag Prodigy. This card is great. Don't forget the evolve trigger like I did in the semifinals. I kept what I literally called my idiot count, which is how many times the Poliwag Prodigy would have triggered had I sequenced correctly and played Kinnan after Poliwag, but I got so excited about wanting to Kinnan to resolve that I sequenced badly. Anyways, Poliwag is really solid. If you get it to at least evolve once, the card is really rocking, and especially during those big counterspell fights, stuff like that. It really has a minimum requirement, just like 1 in a blue, and then it sort of just does its thing from now on, and obviously encourages you to play at least like a creature after you play him for the first time, right? So Poliwag, really happy with the performance of that card. Nothing really negative to say about the Wog. Apart from, I'm pretty impressed by it, and I will probably continue to play it. I think it's probably just a new blue staple for cEDH, and something that I can see us playing for a decent amount of time. So why go back to Kinnan? As we covered in last week's video, I'm feeling really good about Kinnan. Kinnan is one of those decks that is very high ceiling, very low floor. So we're seeing a lot of the numbers for the deck not do really well in the current metagame, but it's really just a matter of adaptability, right? Kinnan is a deck that really thrives if you as a pilot are willing to, engage in the political part of the game a little bit more. If you're willing to be patient, right? If you're not willing to exclusively rely on Kinnan's flips, all of these things are factors to where Kinnan's strengths can lie. I definitely am curious to, and especially now that I've been playing this version of the deck even more, like rely a little bit less on some of the big flips aspect, because honestly, there's some versions of this card that just don't even need the big flips anymore. And, especially now with Valley Floodcaller being printed from the new Bloomburrow set, this is just like a card you can flip into with Kinnan that then gives all your non-creatures flash. And the majority of your win cons, you actually can flash in, right? So if you like flip into a Tidespout Tyrant, suddenly you can have a Floodcaller out and then start looping your rocks. If you play Basalt Monolith into a crop rotation, into a Basalt, into a Treasure Vault, like all of that stuff is ways that you can actually win at instant speed with this deck. So Floodcaller is not one that I had access to for this tournament because, once again, it was the day of pre-release. So I was literally cracking boxes to see if I could get a Floodcaller, and I didn't get one. But this is a card I definitely think it deserves to see play in cEDH, period. It's already being seen in some Rogsai lists that I'm seeing. I think this card's very, very strong, and I'm excited to see sort of where the final home lies for this card in general. But yeah, I think Kinnan is definitely going to adopt this one. But with cards like that and Poliwag and now Stunt Double in my other version, there's definitely a world where you can start trimming down some of these other win cons for just a more mana efficient package. I don't think I'm ever going to really remove like Void Winnower or like One Error Kick or Sphinx. Even Nyx Blue Mage as a backup win con. So like there's only so many of these that I really can feel like trimming, but like I really feel like I just eliminated all of them, but there's a Hall and Thorn Mammoth, which are also really good hits. So like, I don't know, man. There's so many good aspects of those haymakers for this deck that really just flip the game on its head. But that being said, Kinnan feels really good right now. I'm very happy with some of the inclusions that I've added to the deck. The explosivity of the deck, while also having a really solid creature-based grind plan, is just one of the things that makes this list so strong. Spoiler alert, the tournament went pretty decently. So let's talk about this 15K where I played this deck, right? So here's the top 16 of this tournament, and we'll go over some of the decks as we go through the sort of summary of this. What ended up happening with the tournament was it was a 44-person or 48-person event, I want to say. And with that number, we ended up with the optimal structure being 4 rounds of Swiss cut to top 10, right? So despite the fact that the event paid out to the top 16, only the top 10 were able to compete for those final slots. So I feel like easiest thing to do is go over the top 10 decks of this. So here's our 10th place player. I never actually got to play with them during the Swiss, but we have JG of the Claw here with cEDH Rowan Dragonstorm. So this is a pretty interesting list here. This is one of the Rowan decks that does use Dragonstorm as a primary win condition, sort of inspired by, I believe, a Japanese list a few months ago, maybe even longer at this point. But the idea is that you use Rowan's ability to reduce the mana value of your spells, not exactly the mana value, but the cost of the actual spells based on the amount of life you you've lost this turn, using things like your lands mostly. It's probably the most effective way. Also losing crypt flips and stuff like that. Actually, kind of surprised to see no One Ring in this deck. I know some other Rowan pilots are using that, but use a lot of these atypical lands here, things like Tomb of Rami and the Black Gate and stuff like that, and some MDFCs that come in untapped if you bolt yourself for 3. Basically, you use those, and that reduces the cost of your spells for the rest of the turn, and then you sort of storm off. The idea for this specific variant being you just get enough storm so that you can resolve a Dragonstorm, which I believe through some combination of these dragons just ends up winning you the game. I'm not going to lie, I do not know the exact configuration of dragons that you need to be able to win with this deck, as it's not exactly a deck I've sort of hyper-focused on. In my time, I've definitely seen some other versions of Rowan that don't exactly go so hard into the Dragonstorm, but the idea is, as I mentioned, you resolve a Dragonstorm for X equals a few, and then you pull out a bunch of different dragons, which then are able to chain together and win you the game. This is our specifically highlighted card. It's very unique strategy for cEDH. Maybe not, the absolute top tier of the format, but definitely a wild deck. Obviously, we're seeing stuff like Broodlord and Peer into the Abyss lines in this deck, but you also get a lot of really unique cards in this deck. To go over every unique selection that you don't see in every other cEDH deck would probably take about 40 minutes. But needless to say, this deck definitely plays a lot of spicy stuff. The fact that like Priest of Gix and Priest of Urabrask suddenly become dark rituals and sackless Inferno plunges on their own, not to mention just able to take some of these like kind of overcosted effects, things like Ambition's Cost and Ancient Craving, and suddenly those become like 1 black mana, draw 3, lose 3, and those things start to add up pretty quickly. So really cool stuff here. There's also a combo with Searing Touch. If you get Rowan to reduce by 4, Searing Touch plus Burgi allows you to infinitely Burgi, here we go, or Stormkiln Artist, allows you to infinitely ping your opponents down, which is probably one of the easiest win conditions in the deck when you get your Rowan plan going. So really cool stuff. Not a deck that's been really making that top cut a whole ton, but seeing JG of the Claw here taking Dragonstorm to a top 10 finish. We have Blakey623 here with Buccaneer, hashtag BTP Club. This is a Malcolm Tana list. As I mentioned, Malcolm Tana is a deck that's actually doing kind of decently in the current meta, despite sort of falling off favor with a lot of pilots. The numbers as of the past few months are actually pretty high because the deck's not being played nearly as much as it was, but those pilots who are playing it seem to be doing pretty decently. We see here that we have the classic Glinthorn Buccaneer, which is a 1-card combo with your commander Malcolm. The idea being that you can loot through your entire deck, dealing 1 damage to your opponent each time and netting 3 treasures, even though the Buccaneer's ability only costs 2. Then there's also the backup Niv Mizzet lines, which combo with Tandem Lookout and Curiosity and Ophidian Eye, all of which are not in this deck, but you do get Curiosity, Keen Sense, and Tandem Lookout, which all work with your Niv Mizzet combos. You also have some cool dockside stuff here, none of that being necessarily a combo, but then the rest of the deck is a lot of different ways to get your Malcolm out early and jam that Glinthorn Buccaneer. You got your Final Fortunes, your Warrior's Oath, stuff like that to really push the tempo of this deck. It's basically trying to be the creature version of Rog's Eye a lot of the time with the, some backup lines involving Niv and stuff like that. So congrats to our player here for making the top 10 with this Teamer Malcolm list. We have Expressman 13 for He's Just Here for the Colors, Raleigh. This is a Thrasios Vial Smasher list, which looks pretty sweet. A generically grindy Thrasios Vial Smasher list. I believe I did play against this deck in the Swiss rounds of this tournament, but it's a Thras Vial list here that's using Underworld Breach stuff, some Bloodchief Ascension combos, which is kind of interesting. I don't necessarily know if it's like a specific combo, but a lot of draw-based attrition in this deck. We have Orcish Bowmasters, you have Notion Thief, Sheoldred, so a lot of different ways to really punish your opponents for drawing cards. And you have Seedborn Muse to grind you through a bunch of value, some wheels here for your Bowmasters and or Thief-style strategies. We have... Did I see a Bring to Light or am I crazy? No, was it just the Abrupt Decay? Okay, I thought I saw Bring to Light here. We have Deadly Rollick and a bunch of free spells. Oh my goodness, so many free spells. We have Swat, Guardianship, Flare, Forest, My Break Trap, Deadly Rollick. This deck is packed to the gills with some free stuff for sure. Kind of surprised to see no Chthonian Nightmare here, right? Just Thrasios feels like it's a pretty solid outlet in the zone, but doesn't seem to be really any dockside combos in this deck, which is kind of surprising for a Sans White Thrasios list. I guess, once again, this is more of an Opus Thief style strategy, but yeah, I don't know. It feels like if there's going to be a Basalt Monolith combo in this deck, it feels like a Dockside combo would just go like 10 times harder in a deck like this. We also have Necropotence in here because there are some Necro Lions. You have Born Upon a Wind. Do we have Final Fortune? No, we don't. So really, Born is the only. Is there a crop rotation, and is there Emergent Zone? Yes, there is. Okay, so crop rot, E Zone, and Born for the Necropotence payoffs. No Final Fortune effects, but that makes a little bit more sense. Traditionally, all these Necro decks in the format tend to have at least 2 payoffs for that. And also, having E-Zone in a Seaborn Muse deck really doesn't hurt that bad, for sure. So, really interesting deck here. Definitely kind of like a hybrid of some of the more explosive stuff that's going on in the current format with a combination of some like Opus Thief style stuff from cEDH days of old. So, really, really unique deck we got looking at here. Really cool. And congrats to Expressman13 for the top cut. We have Arctic's 0 TTV here with Secret Commander Delny. This is a Tymna Crom variant here, but specifically with some high Delny synergy in this deck. Delny allowing you to have some double Tymna activations, double Esper Sentinel, double Ragavan, double Archivist of Ogma. Doesn't really affect Dauntless Dismantler. Double Dockside for sure. Double Lotho. And yeah, leaning into some of these fun Delny synergies here with this cEDH list. The rest of it does seem to be pretty traditional Blue Farm stuff. Kind of surprised to see Trouble in Pairs and Smothering Tithe in this variant just because it's a decent amount of 4-drops for a Blue Farm list. But apart from that, it's doing the regular Blue Farm stuff, opting for Fire Covenant. So this is much more of a mid-range Blue Farm for sure. And the creature package does sort of lean that way also if we really look at it. So yeah, there's Adnals in the deck, but it makes me feel like that's maybe not nearly as much of a focus as in other variants of Blue Farm. Apart from that, we got a pretty sweet Blue Farm list here, trying to do some Delny stuff and do the Blue Farm thing. We have Accepted here with Teamer Kenrith for Tournament. Accepted is a Kenrith pilot through and through, has been known for playing Kenrith for a considerable amount of time in cEDH. They have sort of taken the backseat for a little bit by doing a lot of the stream work for Top Deck. So they haven't been playing a lot of the tournaments because they've been, behind the booth streaming a bunch of them for the Top Deck channel. And yeah, so Accepted's a well-known Kenrith pilot. I actually played against them in our top 16. I did get pretty lucky in our top 16 match where I had a Mana Dork, 1 land, and a Mana Vault into a 1 ring. So basically turn 2 1 ring as long as I didn't get my Mana Vault misstepped, and then I ended up drawing a Mana Crypt. So I was able to play a Dork and a 1 ring on turn 1. And that's sort of the stuff that got me into the finals of that event. But yeah, we played in this round. This is a pretty classic like hybrid Kenrith list in the sense that, there is, I guess there was Adnaz stuff in some of Accepted's older versions of this deck, but it seems like that has sort of been replaced as the deck has progressed. We have like Chthonian Nightmare loops. We got the classic survival stuff, Underworld Breach things, Birthing Pod in this version, which I'm kind of surprised by. I haven't seen that a ton in Kenrith lists, as well as Agatha's Soul Cauldron, which is, I feel like, more of a hit or miss thing. We have 15 artifacts, which is definitely higher for a Kenrith list. I know that's a list in which people tend to be a little bit lower on them nowadays. Intuition Lines for your breach packages, Born and Final Fortune for those instant speed win potentials, as well as a number of different tutors for your creature combos. You've got Mayhem Devil that works with Dockside in your commander. You have Phantasmal, which works with Dockside in your commander. You have Emil, which just works with Dockside and then eventually your commander. You got a Seaborn Muse package here for a little bit of extra grind, and the classic Kinnan stuff there too as well. So pretty classic Kenrith 5-color mid-range stuff with some particular choices made for Accepted's list. So congrats to our pilot. Running through the 6, duplicated by Jason Benny 57. So this is just a copy of this list because this is also by Jackson Benny 57, not Jason, my bad. This is a Corvold list, and before I look at it, our pilot specifically said if I'm doing a top 10 breakdown, they were very excited to see what I thought of the list. So I'm excited to take a peek at it. This is a Corvold list, and I'm taking a look here. Okay, so we do have sort of the traditional Adnaz Corvold stuff in here. I was maybe expecting a little bit of some deeper cuts for a list like this one. Definitely have some of that Saw and Half synergy, things like that. We have Wither Smog, which I've been talking to a lot of people about Corvold lately as I went on my sort of run with it, and some people have definitely come to me for coaching on it. And Wither Smog has been a combo that I'm really, really low on. I think it's quite bad, to be honest. And so I'm surprised to see a number of different Corvold lists moving towards it nowadays. Lively Dirge really powerful card. Definitely solid for this archetype. The ability to entomb and reanimate a dockside, as well as get back another value creature for your game plan, is totally solid. We have the classic Corvold stuff here. 6, definitely a new pickup for the deck. Super solid. Warren Soul Trader works really decently with a number of different cards in Corvold, but none of the specific combos, because sometimes certain Corvold lists will play Chatterfang, because Warren Soul Trader and Chatterfang become basically make a bunch of tokens and make a bunch of triggers. They also will consider playing Gravecrawler as well. So that's not really present in this version of the deck. You have the Mayhem Devil there for the classic lines, for the Technomancer much the same way, and Stormkiln Artist, which I actually don't see a ton of in Corvold lists nowadays. You have a lot of the classic reanimator stuff to like get you your dockside, then put it in the bin and then bring it back, and then all that kind of stuff. Galvanic Discharge, a little surprised to see that one. But it makes sense if you're trying to focus heavier into that energy synergy, given the fact that dockside is a loopable card with Chthonian Nightmare in this deck. LQR, great protection, very hard to disrupt in any way. We have Saw in Half too here, which there's no specific combos with Saw in Half. It just seems like it's there to get you some more docksides if you've got one already going. And 28 lands, a responsible amount of lands for a Corvold list, which is definitely a bit of a surprise, as this archetype tends to be pretty greedy. And no Dosin, I'm also a little surprised by that, as it helps to really push through those final win conditions. But really cool stuff here from our Corvold pilot, and congrats on making 5th place at this cEDH 15K. And here is my list here. This is my skin in the game with some kick Clash for Cash Rally version. You've already seen it in this episode before. As I mentioned, Polywog Prodigy, really the only update to the list since my last video. It replaced the stunt double, and Polywog definitely put in work. I missed the evolve trigger like 5 times in my semifinals match, and it definitely almost came to punish me a couple times. Luckily, I had so much card advantage from that turn 1/1 ring, like I was talking about, that it really didn't come up at all. But Polywog, super solid, definitely put in work during the tournament. Really happy with this card, just sort of on a blanket level. Not much really more to say about Kinnan, as we just did like a whole video breaking it down last week. But yeah, very happy with bringing back Kinnan. The list feels like it's running super smoothly nowadays. I had a bit of a rough start to the tournament where I won round 1 and then lost the next 2, but was able to bounce back round 4, win the semifinals to get myself out of the finals. The finals, unfortunately, was definitely one of those matches where turn order felt like it was everything, and Nadu in first really ran away with the game to the point where the rest of us were just on the back foot for the whole game, even though we tried and attempted to team up. It just was not going in our favor. So we did not make it through this top 4, but super happy with the deck, super happy to have taken home a part of the split for the $15,000. So, you know, there's definitely no complaints coming here for a hard day's work. And yeah, Kinnan felt like a really good choice. I'm very happy with that. And I will definitely talk about my Sunday tournament after I'm done breaking down these decks. We have King of Cups here with Sissay, Scribe Double Sleeved MTG. This is the King of Cups who was also able to top 16 the Colorado event we recently covered here on the channel, with some spicier cards here in this list. The last version of this, the last version of this deck, he was playing Arbaz Mir, but now he's just playing our blue-black legend here from the Assassin's Creed set. It seems like only one of our Assassin's Creed cards survived the pruning from last time, but the rest of this deck is a pretty classic Tutor Chain Sissay list. Abstergo Entertainment here in the land base. Definitely curious to ask him, because I never asked Guy how he felt about this list. That card in the list specifically, to able to recur and actually hit graveyards as well. So pretty solid there. The rest of the deck, pretty classic Sissay 5-color goodness. We have the Gaedrom Dihadas, kind of one of the spicier inclusions. Gaedrom able to, untap some of your creatures while also being a win condition through the One Ring, which can come up in very specific circumstances, as well as a number of spicy cards here. We also have Volatile Stormdrake, which did come up in our finals match. Unfortunately, not able to put in enough work to be able to take the Nadu deck out from the insane amount of advantage it was granting. So congrats to Guy here for making another top cut. We have Brian Sprouse 19 with Kinnan Tax Evasion. Brian, I have played with at a few of these Galaxy Cons, and has been a really cool person to play against, really fun person to spend some time with outside of the tournaments, and someone just generally cool to hang out with. Also here on Kinnan, and you know what happens when we have 2 decks that are the same commander, we will do a little comparison. So our decks are 12 cards apart. In my list, we have the Bridgeworks Battles, one of my lands, Wooded Foothills, and Windswept Heath and Polluted Delta. So definitely more fetches in my variant, as well as Sylvan Library, Elvish Mystic, Resculpt, Green Sun Zenith, Miscast, Delay, Fyndhorns, and Polywog Prodigy. So Wog out and a few of the 2-mana interactive pieces, as well as Green Suns, which I'm actually a little surprised to not see Green Suns in Brian's version of the list. Whereas Brian is rocking the Homeward Path Perplexed Chimera combo, a combo I absolutely refuse to play. The Armored Scrap Gorger, one that I get flack with from some of the other Kinnan pilots, and once again, also adamantly refuse to play. March, a card I've had in the deck for quite some time, just not in the current version. Agatha's, interestingly, another outlet for Kinnan. Definitely helps with some of the more explosive win attempts from this deck if you're trying to be a little bit of a faster Kinnan variant. And then Coma, which is a card I wish I could feel great about putting back in the 99 of this deck, but it just feels like there's never enough space for Coma, despite how much I do truly adore it. Veil Summer Pongify over some of the 2-mana interaction that you saw in my variant to the list. As mentioned, I tend to like a little bit more stack interaction in my version, and also not adding more colorless lands like for the perplexing Homeward Path combo. But yeah, Brian's a very good pilot on this deck, someone who I've grown to respect a lot, having played against him a number of times, and it was really cool to see him out here doing well at this tournament. And finally, we have the winner, Wounded Satellite, here with Target Practice. How many kittens does it take to paint a wall? Depends on how hard you flicker them. That is a mouthful of a deck name. This is Wounded's Nadu list. And having played against this version of Nadu, I definitely realized that there were some flaws in my own variant of Nadu, which definitely leads me to having played a different version during Sunday's tournament, which we'll then talk about after this portion of the deck. This is Wounded's mid-range Nadu list. It doesn't play like a number of other Nadu lists. Oh, it seems like he's updated it since the tournament, adding Polywog into the deck. So this might not be the version he exactly played at the event, but the idea is that you sort of play more mid-range Nadu style thing than the Nadu we've really covered here on the channel a good amount. This version's much more interactive, things like Misdirection, Flusterstorm, and Tameo Safekeeping, relying on Sea Kings and Sylvan Paradise. These were not in my first versions of Nadu, and I think I was super wrong on those. I thought that maybe they were a little win more, and also, you know, if I could avoid spending a bunch of money on cards that would literally never see play in any other deck, I was like, maybe I avoid the big L on that one. But I think I was just wrong, unfortunately, and I will have to pick up real copies of these cards. But yeah, just a super interactive, like 28 instants, all of them either trigger your commander, get you something at instant speed, or allow you to interact on the stack. So very, very interactive Nadu list, not to mention like the creatures that allow you to interact and a bunch of different stuff like that. So the idea is really you play a much more patient gameplay. It's not necessarily trying to just jam the Nantuko and then like storm, much like you see like Old Sabretooth's version doing. This one's a lot closer to kind of how Kinnan is played at some of these top tables, which is a lot more of that, like, develop as many pieces as I can for the time being that I'll gain some advantage, but not push too hard until I really see my window. And having played this type of version of Nadu, I definitely think it is pretty solid at being able to do that mid-range game plan pretty well, and definitely liked playing the deck a lot better on day 2. If you haven't heard about ToaMagic.com, have you been watching any of my last videos? But Toa Magic is an awesome online web store. Tales of Adventure Magic has a great presence in the magic scene in general, and they have been showing up to a ton of different events and basically having a crazy amount of inventory. You can actually order on ToaMagic.com and pick up cards at events during things like Command Fest and stuff like that. So ToaMagic.com, you can use code Comedian to get a percentage off of your order. The links for which are in the description down below, but come check them out. They have a great variety of singles, and you can pick up yours today. So speaking of day 2, let's jump over to I guess technically this is day 3 because Friday was the 1K, Saturday the 15K. Let's talk about Sunday's 5K. So at Sunday's 5K, I ended up, it was a top 4 cut with 23 players. And unfortunately, I ended up in 5th place in the top 4 cut, which was a bit of a shame. I felt really good about the deck despite landing in 5th place. My only loss was to Wounded in the triple Nadu mirror match with one poor Corvold player stuck in that match. Drew my round 1 so this was a 3-rounder, remember? So 1 loss to Wounded, 1 win that I felt pretty solid about. I was able to grind out a very lengthy game in which a Clam Chowder player who was ahead of me in turn order was really pulling away with the game. And then eventually I was able to sort of outgrind them with Nadu. There was also a draw in round 1 where it was one of those weird situations where everyone was really friendly and we were talking a lot as a table, but not in a way where it was like super disruptive to the pace of the game, but enough where it definitely was not moving the game along at the fastest pace. And it ended in a draw in a situation where realistically, I'm pretty sure the game was going to end in my favor. I had to basically, I went all in on my second to last turn there, or my last turn there, pardon me, where I couldn't be able to storm off with the deck and I had to pass, but I was passing with like 8 pieces of something to do in my hand. It wasn't all interaction, but it was either more card draw or more interaction, to the point where if it got back around to me, I would have something like 15 cards, a lot of them interaction pieces, and I have a really hard time believing anybody could have won through that state, especially because I believe part of that equation was me overloading a Cyclonic Rift and having my opponents basically like have to give me a bunch of advantage with Nadu so that we didn't die to a Gyrita player who's in 4th seat, which was super cool. So unfortunately, that round 1 draw normally wouldn't be a huge thing. I felt really good about the deck once again if it got back around to me in the table, and if we had sort of played it a little bit faster as a table, I definitely would have won that game. And I shouldn't say definitely, but it felt very much like the game was extremely in my favor, given how the rest of the pace of the game had gone. And so that part was a little bit unfortunate. And especially because, like, once again, in a 3-round tournament, you basically have to get 2 wins or you're out. And as you can see, there was one person who got 1 win, 1 draw and was able to make the top 4, right? But it's 3 rounds. So it's kind of hard to say, who's able to do that well, but the deck felt extremely good. My 1 loss was to Wounded Satellite, and it was one of those things where I had to exile an Ellis Spirit Guide to handle the player who was dealing something in first, and then I just drew no green sources for the rest of the game. I think I drew like an island, hit a Minamo off of Nadu activation, and then drew a Mox Diamond in a row, when if I had another green mana, I would be 100% in the game. But we just got snowballed out because Wounded basically had a Mystic Remora that got fed from turn 1. So my 1 loss, I didn't feel super bad about, because, it was just one of those, my deck drew so bad, like you can't even make that stuff up, right? And then the win, I felt pretty solid about. Felt like the deck was performing really well and super interactive. And the 1 draw, as I mentioned, felt like a game that had we gotten another turn rotation, I felt really good about my potential to win that game. So the deck did pretty decently that second day. I'm excited to continue playing it and see how it goes now that I'm kind of getting used to it. It's really difficult to play. I will say it's one of the more difficult decks I've had to play in quite some time, in the sense that, every piece of Storm matters a great deal. Every piece of when do you activate Nadu? When do you go for the passive plan? When do you try and activate on other people's turns? All of that stuff. It feels really solid. I really enjoyed the play style. I don't love that my opponents sort of have to sit there while I just Nadu activate a whole bunch, but that also sort of just is how the deck works, unfortunately. I've gotten pretty fast at being able to go through those loops, but the tough part is, in a tournament setting, I don't want to have to take shortcuts, because there are shortcuts that will open me up to interaction from my opponents. And unfortunately means that sometimes when you have to play decks like this to play the safe way, to avoid interaction and to play the optimal way, it does mean that you are playing ways that are taking a longer time, right? Which means sometimes that you basically sculpt your hand so you have 8 pieces of interaction and you pass around the table so that when you untap next turn, it's a definitive win, but you sort of make people sit there through that process too, right? Which is obviously not great for a tournament setting. And I do get why people get kind of agitated playing against Nadu when they're playing it in that optimal way, because it really does put the pressure on the table to just kind of sit there for a decent amount of time when those things are going on. So all that being said, the deck is extremely powerful. I really enjoyed playing it, and it's definitely one that I'll be playing more in the future. I'm going to compare my list to, I guess, Wounded's current list. and kind of talk about some of the choices. Obviously, once again, I think his list has been updated since the tournament, but definitely talk about some of the particular choices that we had. I will say I had moved a couple cards around. I cut things like Cloud of Fairies, which was in my first version. As much as it was great during the Storm part of the game, it was really bad during other parts of the game. So difference is I'm on Earthcraft, Allosaurus Shepherd, Spell Snare, more fetch lands because I'm on the Earthcraft package. I'm on Command Beacon because Drannith was a pain. I was talking to Wounded, he was like, oh, I haven't seen a single Drannith playing Nadu. And I was like, I've seen so many Dranniths playing with Nadu. So I was kind of surprised to hear that. I also like the Elvish Herder to be able to target my creatures bunch, give me advantage at instant speed. It's a good advantage piece going into the mid game. And I'm on Mox Amber and Sylvan Library. Archery Charm probably coming out just because the triple green in this deck, even though it's a 2-color deck, you would think it doesn't come up that much, but this deck's mana margins are actually pretty tight from my experience so far, and I definitely do not want to mess with that. Just to remind, Wounded's list, Wounded's not on the whole basic package like I am, right? So the less options to fetch basics for Earthcraft on Veil Summer, which I took out because it didn't target my stuff and it didn't proactively counter my opponent's stuff. Noxious Revival, which is a card I'm kind of like back and forth on. Mystical Tutor, that's one where I'm like, I think I might want that, but I didn't have enough time to test it because I had just added Sea King's Blessing, Sylvan Paradise, stuff like that. So hard to really say. Tezzeret the Seeker, not one I really wanted to invest a bunch of mana into. If you notice, I sort of kept my investments for mana pretty tight. Like there's not really a lot of ways to really go up that chain super hard. So Tezzeret, I feel like is just like it feels like a Kinnan leftover more so than it feels like a card for this deck, in my personal opinion. Then Tenyo Safekeeping is one I shouldn't have copy of and didn't really want to proxy up. I think the card is very good, but right now the slots in the deck are kind of tight, so I'm not really sure what I would cut for safekeeping, even though I do see a lot of really good stuff from this card. So all in all, happy with how the deck played. I definitely am still learning it, and I really think it's a cool list. I'm excited to play it more because there's, as I said, still a decent amount I have to learn about playing Nadu, but I do think the deck has a decent amount of potential, having played it for the first time. And I don't know, I'm just excited to mess around with it because, as I mentioned, it's much my play style. It really, and it does a lot of unique stuff. It does not feel like other decks in the format. Which I really appreciate, right? I like when a new strategy sort of comes out. People definitely need to like establish play patterns for playing around it, as well as, figure out what they can and cannot allow their opponents to resolve when Nadu comes down. But I feel like people would definitely respect the deck a pretty decent amount. So that's what I kind of like about the mid-range version, is that it really does just play a responsible game of Magic, which is pretty much my play style anyway. So that part's pretty sick. And yeah, enjoyed playing Nadu. I like a creature combo deck, and I like a mid-rangey deck, and it really does sort of fit in that hybrid space between the two. So all in all, had a great weekend, had a great time at the Clash for Cash event at GalaxyCon. The Clash for Cash events, I think, are going to keep going. There is a Des Moines event coming up in the near future. They actually just posted about it on social media today. So over here on the Clash for Cash website, we can see they have another event coming up pretty soon. And if you want to find out any of the details of that, just go to the Clash for Cash gaming website, literally just clashforcashgaming.com, has all of the details. I will put it in the description down below, and it should have any of the details for the events coming up. I know some of the future tournaments were a little bit TBD on specifically what the dates are. They have Des Moines up on the website right now. I'm not sure if that's 100% going through, but as of right now, it's up on the website. So I'm assuming that is what the next event will be, which is pretty sweet. These prizes are very real for these events, and they've been showing up. They've been working with Top Deck to have them count for their leaderboard, and I assume the next event will count for next season's leaderboard. They've been really professionally run. The judge staff is awesome. The staff working for Clash is awesome. I've had a great time working with them, and I continue to desire to want to go to these tournaments, and I will probably be at whatever ones come next. So having a great time working with Clash and excited to see what happens in the future with them. Just want to remind you all too, while you're here watching this video, that we do coaching here on Comedian MTG. So if you want to take your cEDH gaming up to the next level, you can hire me. You can find me over at comedianmtg@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at comedianmtg or comedian_mtg over on Discord, all of which are in the description down below this video. If you're interested in taking that next step up in your game, I actually I've been traveling a ton ton these past few weeks, but it's been really cool that even though I've been sort of going all over the place, not only have I been able to run into coaching recipients who have been at these tournaments and competing with me and against me, but I've also been able to get a bunch of DMs lately about a number of my students, especially in the past 2 weeks, who actually have been able to win some local events. Shout out to Nooch and Z Hippie specifically, who both took down some of their recent local events after our recent session. So major shout out to them, and a number of different clients who reached out to me recently about doing pretty well post coaching. If you're interested in any of that stuff, shoot me a DM and I'll get you all that information. We are also now partnered with Heavy Play, which has been a super awesome thing for this channel. I have been using the Heavy Play deck box and dice box and playmat at all of my events lately, which is totally not part of my partnership with Heavy Play. But honestly, I love the product. It's super sweet stuff. I've liked their product way before I started working with them. And when we partnered up, I was like, heck yeah, let's go. There is an affiliate link down in the description of this video for Heavy Play. And if you use my code, you can get a chunk off of your order. Heavy Play is awesome. Use the affiliate link down below to let them know that I sent you. Yeah, these deck boxes are super sick. They feel so high tech. The magnet clasps that all connect to each other are all super convenient. I literally can like lock my playmat in and then put my deck box on top of it. It's so nice not having to worry in a tournament setting about like, all right, here's my deck, and then I pull the stuff out and I pull the sleeves out, and here's my tokens and all that stuff. Basically, with the Heavy Play boxes, they just lock in right into place, and I really don't have to worry about any of it. It might seem like a small thing too, but the fact that the playmat folds into a flat actual just rectangle is so convenient, because my bag does not have like the biggest pocket for playmats, and like not having to roll up my tube every single game is actually such a small but important thing for mental health. I've loved working with Heavy Play and using their product. And as I mentioned, there will be a Patreon giveaway pretty soon in the channel, basically as soon as I stop traveling for a few weeks in a row. By the time you're all watching this video, I will have just returned back from Gen Con, so I'll have a much more open schedule for the rest of August. I mean, I'll still be going to the Invitational, I'll still be doing a number of events, but definitely won't be as crazy as the past few weeks. And if you're interested in coaching and stuff like that, the schedule is much more open for the next few weeks. So hit me up. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching this video. I can't stress enough how appreciative I am of you all. If you hit that like button, that subscribe button, helps out the channel a ton. And if you check out patreon.com/comediannpg, you're one of the amazing people keeping the lights off. You're also one of the people who are going to be registered for that Heavy Play giveaway that we'll be doing here pretty soon. By the time you're watching this video, it will be probably right about now. Thank you all so much. You're an amazing audience, and I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. I'll catch you next time. Peace.
I know I've been quiet for a minute. I've been grinding, still in it. I've been counting these digits. Excuse me. I know I've been quiet for a minute, but I'm back on my business. If you see me, don't trip, just excuse me. Wrong if I do, wrong if I don't. That's why I do me no matter what, so excuse me. Lie if I do, lie if I don't. The proof is in the story, take a seat, excuse me.